This video is brought to you by Nebula. For most of the 21st century, Spain was one of the most pro-migrant countries in Europe. Despite a surge in migrant numbers in the 2000s, Spanish politics remained remarkably migrant-friendly, and anti-migrant parties struggled to break through in the 2010s, when they were surging in the rest of Europe. Recently, though, the political landscape has shifted, and the current socialist government is struggling to deal with high migration inflows, prompting them to take a harsher stance on the issue. So in this video, we're going to take a look at why Spain was previously so open to migrants, how the Spanish government's migration policy has shifted, and the politics behind this shift. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So let's start with some context. Between 1999 and 2010, Spain's population jumped from 40 million to 47 million, as thousands of migrants from all over the world arrived in unprecedented numbers in search of employment. In 1999, migrants made up 2% of Spain's population. This soared to 12% by 2009, which is equivalent in size to that of Spain's three largest cities combined: Madrid, Barcelona, and Valencia. Today, Spain has one of Europe's highest shares of foreign-born residents, and it's been relatively easy for these migrants to become part of Spanish society. This is in part because the government put in a lot of effort to naturalise as many migrants as possible, but also because Spanish public sentiment to immigration is markedly friendlier than basically any other European country. For instance, a 2017 EU barometer found that only 22% of Spanish respondents had a total negative perception of migrants, much lower than the EU average and other southern European frontline states like Italy and Greece. And on top of that, in the mid-2010s, when populist migrant skeptic parties were rising across the EU, like the National Front in France and the AfD in Germany, far-right equivalents in Spain were struggling. So why was Spain so migrant-friendly? Well, for starters, the legacy of the right-wing Francisco Franco dictatorship has fostered a skepticism towards nationalism, which has been further diminished by the strong regional identities in Spain's 17 autonomous regions. Second, a key grievance among far-right voters is the belief that immigrants drain social welfare systems. However, the Spanish welfare system actually offers quite little in terms of social housing and direct support payments, meaning natives and migrants are rarely in direct competition. Consequently, headlines about foreigners claiming benefits are rare. More generally, the Spanish media has long maintained a relatively sober tone on the issue, and a United Nations report found that the Spanish press is generally sympathetic to migrants, rarely portraying them as a threat. Finally, since Franco, Spain's political landscape has been dominated by the rotation of either the left-wing Spanish Socialist Workers' Party or the right-wing People's Party. The People's Party, currently in opposition, has long acted as a catch-all for conservative voters, from traditional Francoist Catholic supporters to smaller populist anti-immigration factions, constraining the emergence of a significant far-right presence. Since taking over in 2018, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has maintained a pro-migrant policy. He's publicly rejected the EU's trivialising use of mass migration, and reiterated the need for migrant workers in Spain's ageing society, who accounted for 64% of new jobs created and half of Spain's economic growth last year. In May, his party approved a citizens' initiative to regularise 500,000 undocumented migrants. Today, however, Sanchez has changed his tune. Last week, the Spanish Prime Minister travelled to multiple West African countries and signed circular migrant agreements with Gambia and Mauritania, on top of a pre-existing one with Senegal, which allows workers from these countries to come to Spain for short periods to meet labour needs, and then return to their country of origin. During a press conference, Sanchez maintained that migration is important for Spain's economy, but added it implies certain problems, and warned that it was, quote, essential that those who arrive in Spain irregularly return to their countries of origin. Now, to be fair to Sanchez here, he would say that this isn't really a U-turn intended to halt migration altogether, but is instead an effort to regulate it. Nonetheless, it's undeniably at least a change in tone. So what motivated this shift? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First, maintaining control of certain migratory channels has proved difficult recently, with the number of undocumented arrivals surging in the past year. Following the COVID pandemic in 2020, migration numbers shot up, and nearly 57,000 migrants illegally entered Spain in 2023, an 82% year-on-year increase and the highest number since 2018. Deportations of undocumented migrants have also started to rise again, after falling over the last 10 years. This year, about 31,000 migrants reached Spain, with more than 23,000 of them making the crossing in boats from North and West Africa to the Canary Islands. The island's regional president has duly declared a migrant emergency, whilst the People's Party has called on Sanchez to declare a migration emergency for the entire country. The rise of the far right has also added political pressure on Sanchez. Vox has emerged as the first radical right party in Spain since Franco, capitalising on an invigorated sense of Spanish nationalism after the 2017 Catalonia independence referendum. After securing third place in the 2019 national elections, Vox has since shifted its focus from Catalonian independence to anti-immigration politics. The party quickly began to achieve electoral success, especially in areas where the proportion of migrants, African migrants in particular, is highest. In 2022, Vox struck a deal with the People's Party to enter regional government for the first time, which has since provided them with a platform to advocate controversial politics, such as suspending citizenship for those from Islamic cultures and restricting aid to migrants. Studies show that Vox's emergence has intensified polarisation of public opinion on immigration, and in July, a poll found that immigration has become the fourth most important issue for Spanish voters. Sanchez faces increasing pressure not only from the far right, but also from other political factions. He narrowly avoided a summons to Parliament regarding the migration crisis following a tied vote, where Junts, the primary Catalan separatist party, joined forces with right-wing parties like the People's Party and Vox to criticise Sanchez's migration politics. The People's Party aims to squeeze out Vox and the newly formed Se Acabó la Fiesta, which won 800,000 votes and 3 seats in the EU elections, by advocating strict immigration measures. It's even adopted some of Vox's suggestions, like deploying the army to control borders. For their part, Junts is moving right on immigration, in part because they're currently being challenged by the Catalan Alliance, an emerging far-right anti-immigration party. For context, since the failed independence referendum in 2017, the salience of the independence issue has declined, while immigration has become a central issue in the region that has one of Spain's highest migration rates. In general, Catalans are more migration sceptic than your average Spaniards, with a recent poll finding that 60% of Catalans and 64% of Junts voters feel there's too much immigration in the region. Ultimately, whether this shift marks a new permanent change in Spanish attitudes towards migration or just a blip in an otherwise welcoming country remains to be seen. Now, that isn't everything. We've actually got a new TLDR series called WTF USA, and you can check that out just here.
Look, as British people, we often cast a wary eye at our friends across the Atlantic. But honestly, the last few months have been especially wild. We've seen Biden bail from the race after a terrible debate.
My fellow Americans.
The red-blue divide making way for lurid green. Trump accusing Kamala of changing her race. Vance getting accused of couches. Endless memes about coconut trees, and endless arguments over crowd sizes.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes.
Obama making a joke, Trump talking about Biden like an ex he misses, RFK Jr. potentially having worms in his brain, before admitting to burying a bear in Central Park. Oh, and an assassination attempt that we all kind of forgot about because of all of the other chaos. I mean, honestly, WTF USA. The thing is though, while it might be tempting to just roll your eyes at these shenanigans, these aren't just meme-worthy moments. And you know I'm serious, because I've not stood up in a video since COVID. But these incidents actually pose important questions, like how much does the Gen Z vote matter this time round? How important will online campaigning and social media prove to be? What impact do running mates have? Okay, I don't have words for that one. These are the kinds of things we'll be explaining in our new Nebula original series, What to Follow USA, only on Nebula. Each week, we'll take the moments that have been dominating internet discourse and explaining the true politics under the hood. Look at me pandering to the American audience. We'll be releasing new episodes of What to Follow every Friday through to the election. The fact that it's on Nebula means we've been able to take more risks with this series. The tone and attitude of the show isn't what you'd expect from TLDR. I'm not sure we've talked about fucking couches on YouTube before, but the journalism and reporting is exactly the standard you'd expect. Nebula support also means that we can do things differently, create additional content for you, and tackle topics that the YouTube algorithm just wouldn't normally allow for. It's not just this new series on Nebula either though. There's also incredible originals on the platform like Modern Conflicts from Real Life Law, or the upcoming documentary from Tom Nicholas, Boomers, which takes a provocative look at the lives and legacy of the baby boom generation. Plus, we also post all of our normal content on Nebula ad-free, and often before it ends up on YouTube. If you want to check all of that out, plus WTF USA, then head to go.nebula.tv/WTF, or click the link in the description. That way, you can pick up an annual Nebula subscription for a huge 40% off. We're really happy with how this new series has turned out, so please do give the series a look. We'd really appreciate it.